to welcome Hollie Arnett from Maker and Moxie, a brand strategist and coaching service for creative entrepreneurs. Hollie is the founder, and her mission is to help creatives build their brands, grow their audiences, and share their work with the world. Maker and Moxie offer masterminds that act as branding labs to take a business idea to brand growth and beyond. The masterminds can be 12 months in duration and are open via applications only, so you can be sure of the caliber and comprehensiveness of the lab. So welcome to the show, Hollie. We'd love to start with learning more about your journey as a business owner, as we're business owners ourselves, and we are always looking at enjoying hearing about what others do, and especially with you. So to start, what is Maker and Moxie, and where did your inspiration and meaning behind the name come from?
Yeah, great question. So thank you so much for a great introduction. You make me sound wonderful, so thank you. You did a great job, probably better than I can do. But yes, so Maker and Moxie, as you said, we do brand strategy and coaching for creatives. So as you mentioned, that most of that comes through my mastermind, but that also comes through a lot of like teaching and resources through podcast and blogs and social media content and all of that good stuff. And the inspiration for the name came from multiple things, but the maker portion of it is because that's who I work with. I work with makers, so people who make things with their hands or with their mind, or just make something that they share and put out into the world, whether that's physical or not. And then the Moxie part of it, that's the bit that people ask me about all the time, because it's something that not many people know what it means, which I kind of like because it's a good conversation starter. But Moxie basically means like grit and determination and a bit of attitude, and a bit of like confidence and a bit of like badass behavior a little bit. That was kind of, I felt like it fit perfectly, because you kind of have to have that to be an artist and to be a creative. You have to have a bit of like determination and attitude to decide to go out on your own and be a creative and decide to take your own path. And so that's what I believe in, helping people to kind of own that and uncover that. You already have that. I believe you already have that. I'm just here to help you to uncover that and own that and share that with the world. And so Maker and Moxie together is, my whole mission is just to help makers own their Moxie. That's a little bit about Maker and Moxie.
Oh, just another question before I give it to Jess. You mentioned in your bio that it really changed, you naming your business Maker and Moxie really profoundly changed your business. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So for some context, my business before that was called Black and White Studios. And that started because my business originally was a hand lettering studio. So I started as a hand lettering artist. That's what I was doing as a freelancer and as an artist myself. And I kind of was in a situation where I needed to pick a name quite quickly. So at the time I was doing predominantly black and white hand lettering work. And so I picked Black and White Studios because it was easy, and I needed something quickly that I could just register on the business like name registry, and I could pick it and go. And so I chose that, and it worked for a while. But there were some practical problems with that, and that I kept getting tagged in black and white photography things, which has nothing to do with what I do. And also, as my business like developed over time, I was doing hand lettering, which turned into doing hand lettered logos, which then I pivoted into doing the whole brand identity, and then doing the brand strategy, and then to doing what I'm doing now, which is the like Cliff Notes version of how I got to where I am now. So by the time I got to what I'm doing now, I was like, well, Black and White Studios doesn't explain what I'm doing at all. It's very confusing. I don't do photography, so that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I needed something new. And so when I decided on and shifted to Maker and Moxie, it really was like kind of this permission slip in a way for me to step into a whole like new me and a new business and a new era of who I am and what I do and who I work with. And it just kind of felt like this, like coming home a little bit, like, oh, this is where I fit and this feels really like the right place to be. And yeah, it just felt like this opening up of opportunities and of being in the right place and being the right name and the right fit for what I'm doing and who I am. And it felt, because it's so, well, I think perfectly aligned with what I do and who I serve and what I'm trying to achieve, it like attracts all the right people and says all the right things and everything. So it definitely feels right, and it feels like it's unlocked a lot of like opportunities and people knowing more what I do, and just really like locking in that positioning for me as a brand. So I think it was a good move. Hopefully other people can tell me if they disagree, but I think so.
That's amazing. I feel like it was obviously quite pivotal in both business and, by the sounds of it, in life as well, which is absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild how much just a name can do that, but it is powerful, definitely.
And I love Moxie. I think we can all do with a little bit more Moxie in our lives. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, further to that, we'd like to talk about a little bit around some brands that you may put on a pedestal. So in your opinion, do you have any really rock star brand identities that stand out to you that maybe you look up to or that you've supported in building as well?
Yeah, for sure. Not one that I have supported in building, but one that I look up to or that I kind of admire or think is doing a really great job is someone called Meg Lewis. I don't know if you know of her or have seen her, but she is like an independent artist, and she is very she is just really like a distinct personality, and you can see that from her brand identity through to like how she just shows up online, the clothes she wears, like the way she just presents herself, like everything about it is so distinctly her. And I think she is so like unapologetically herself, and she is just very confident in who she is and not afraid to do that. And I think that's a really shining example of how everybody in this kind of in where we are right now in terms of like social media and personal branding and any type of branding can stand out and be unique and be yourself and create an identity and become known for who you are, and not just about like what you do, which is important too, but who you are as an individual is such a great example of that, and somebody who you can learn a lot from in terms of building very unique and stand out and memorable brand that is hard to replicate because it's just so her. And she does things that like nobody else has ever done before, that you just think, how did she come up with that idea? It's so unique and so different. That is just amazing. So I definitely think she is such a great example and someone I always recommend people go and have a look at, like on Instagram or her website or everything, to just go and look at what she's doing visually and like on social media and everything, because she is just a great example for sure.
I
feel like I'm gonna have to do. Oh, sorry, go.
I suppose it's about how you're saying about being yourself, and basically that on its own sets you apart. And Yeah, I really like that. I've just looked her up actually while we're on here, and it is very bright and bold, and yeah, it's very unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jess, what were you going to ask?
I was just going to say, I suppose you talk like a bit of personal brand and bringing that personality into the brand and that brand identity. Obviously, that is key for anyone to be able to really present and embody their brand as well. Yeah, because I know at times it can be difficult. I know that I get lost in my own brand sometimes and forget the person that I am behind the brand. So, yeah, obviously that is like key to success, I feel.
Yeah, for sure.
So one thing that drew us to you is the 8-week brand strategy mastermind. What sort of inspired you for that, and how does it work? And what has surprised you the most from that brand strategy mastermind? Some almost highlights or some gems that have come from that brand strategy mastermind.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, for being drawn to that. That's exciting. So first of all, what kind of inspired me to do that is that I guess there's sort of two ways of doing branding traditionally. There's like hiring somebody to do it for you, and paying somebody and going that route, which is very exciting but also expensive, which is great. People who are doing the branding deserve to be paid, and that's awesome. Then there's DIYing your brand, which is also great, but then you're sort of missing out on maybe the support or the expertise of somebody who knows how to do branding really well, which can, if you're not an expert at branding, can maybe just, you're missing out on maybe just, you might not have the confidence to know that you're doing the right thing, or you're making the right decisions, or you just need some support to be able to do that, which you would get if you were hiring somebody, right? But not everybody has the income or the resources to be able to do that, so they DIY it. So there was this gap in the middle where it was like, okay, there's these DIY people who want to have this really awesome brand, and they need this strategy and they need a plan to be able to build an awesome brand, but they need the support and they need somebody to be able to say like, yes, you're doing a great job, or have you thought about this, or maybe we could try this, or just somebody to bounce ideas off of and get some feedback from, or just have somebody on their side who can support them through that process. Enter me. And also like to have other people by your side who are also doing the same thing, so that you're not on your own as you're figuring it out, right? Because there are other creatives who are also trying to figure their brand out at the same time. So that's where I created Map Your Brand Magic, which is what the program is called. So it goes through your brand strategy from start to finish. So we start from figuring out your purpose, like why are you building this brand? What is the point? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What are you trying to build? What's your vision? All of that sort of stuff, all the way through to like your audience and your mission and your values and your like visual direction. So we don't go into like actually designing anything, but what is the visual direction, like what do you want it to feel like, and all of that stuff. So in the end, you come out of it with a complete brand strategy, so you know exactly what your plan is to be able to achieve whatever your goal is with your brand. So that's what Map Your Brand Magic is all about. And so some things that I have found really awesome about it is just like the thing that I find that always comes out of the brand strategy process is clarity. That's the number one thing everybody always talks about, is just like, wow, they like, I just feel so much more clear and confident. And it's amazing how quickly that can happen. Like, I'm just working with somebody at the moment who's just started going through it. And she was on like step 1, going through her like purpose. And she was like, I already can tell how this process is making me feel so much more clear and so much more confident in what I'm doing. And so that alone, like, despite the fact that you get an act like a strategy and you get all the tangible things, just the clarity out of it is so exciting, and so worth the whole process. So that makes it worth it for me, for sure.
That's brilliant. I feel like brand strategy, especially when you're starting out right at the beginning, there's so many bits and pieces that have to come together to be able to make, create, develop a brand strategy that is really impactful. And the fact that you're giving people clarity on day one must be empowering for you and super empowering for them as well. I wonder, is there any like common maybe like roadblocks or mindset things that people come across right at the beginning of, because I know how overwhelming it was. I mean, not my area of expertise, but I'd love to hear from your perspective what some of your students or clients have come across.
Yeah, for sure. I think the overwhelm is the number one. And this is what I actually recorded like an intro to the program that explains this. And this is how I explain it, is that have you ever seen the Marie Kondo, like the life-changing magic of tidying up? Okay, so I explain that brand strategy is like the life-changing magic of tidying up. So it's the exact same process. You have to get everything out onto the bed. So every thought, every idea, every piece of research, every like testimonial, absolutely everything out onto the page. And you're going to look at it and you're going to think, oh my God, like what the heck is going on? And in this case, it's probably like a Miro board or like a big brainstorm or a piece of paper or whatever. And you're going to look at it and think, this is so much information. This is so overwhelming. I've got missions, I've got a vision, I've got values, I've got information about my audience, I've got all this stuff, and I'm so overwhelmed and like it's too much. But then what happens is that we do the Marie Kondo. We look at each piece of information and we pick it up and we think, does this spark joy?
Hold it tight. Does it spark joy?
How does this feel? How does this feel? Does it spark joy? If it doesn't spark joy, we say, okay, thank you. And we let it go.
Love that.
If it does spark joy, then we hold on to it and okay, let's keep that. And then we start like organizing things. Okay, how does this fit together? How do these bits fit together? How can we organize this and fit this together in a way that works for you, in a way that makes sense, in a way that like is structured for your business and for your life and for your brand? And then we come together and we've got a system and a strategy that makes sense. So like, that's how I kind of explain it, is that it might feel a little bit overwhelming, but it's kind of this like, there's a like actual design thinking principle behind it, which is like diverging and then converging. You have to diverge and kind of go wide to get all the ideas at first and kind of get as much information and gather as much information as you can. And then you can kind of converge and then find the actual result and the magic at the end. So it might feel overwhelming, but that's okay. That's part of the process. We just have to find the bits that spark joy and then figure out the strategy and the system. So that's kind of how I explain it. And hopefully that kind of quells the overwhelm and is like, okay, the overwhelm is just part of the process and that's okay. It's normal to feel a little bit overwhelmed. And that we'll find the good bits out of the overwhelm, you know? Yeah.
100%. I think having dealt with the other side, the visual brand identity side, brand strategy is so important. When it's done really well and suited, you're right, it's 100%. It makes the visuals so much better.
Yeah. I found like when I used to still do like brand identity, once I had like done the brand strategy, I found the brand identity so easy. I was like, well, duh, this bit's like, I know what colors we need to use. I know what the logo needs to look like. I've done all the hard part. It's like I've already found the answers to all the questions. Now I just need to put all the puzzle pieces into place. It was the brand strategy is definitely like, it feels like the hard part, but it's so worth it for sure.
That's interesting. Well, that's actually probably a good segue, because something that we really love about obviously Branducopia and yourself is like getting some insights and learnings, and obviously sharing knowledge. And one of these things is your ultimate branding checklist, which I've personally downloaded already. And it is very comprehensive and I love it. It definitely makes it super easy for business owners to really dial into their brand strategy and identity. So if you could share like one principle for strategy or identity, what would it be and why did you pick those? It's a difficult one, because I feel like there's
I think for your brand strategy, the one thing you should focus on is your like key message. Like, what is the one thing that you want to talk about and be known for, and repeat that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Like the pinnacle of.
Yeah. I would say that would be the brand strategy one. And then for brand identity, I would say color would be my top priority, because color has is the most powerful in terms of recognition. It's like 80%, I can't remember the statistic. It's super powerful, basically, color. People will remember color super powerfully. And I'm wearing my brand colors, so you can't really because of the sun. But pink and orange are my brand colors, and people recognize my pink and orange so strongly that they know my brand like immediately, and it's really powerful. And you'll like see it out in the wild all the time. You'll see red and yellow and you immediately think McDonald's, or you know, like you just know, and it's so much more powerful than a logo even. Like you will see ads that might just be like that red and yellow and you would think like McDonald's fries. And so pick your key colors and use those consistently, cohesively. That would be my key thing to choose if you're going to focus on anything to do with your brand identity.
That's really cool. I agree with you with the colors. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Further on to that question is around creating consistency. We're talking about brand identity again, and we speak of colors, and you've mentioned like things like McDonald's and the ads and all that sort of stuff. So what are some of the key pieces of advice that you could provide around having brand consistency across platforms for customer touch points, and why is it so critical? Which I think you've sort of covered, but let's dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Well, the reason that it is critical is because it takes, I think, between 5 to 7 times. Don't quote me word for word on that because the statistic might be slightly incorrect, but I think it's 5 to 7 times for somebody to see your brand, for them to remember your brand. So you need to make sure that each of those 5 to 7 times are consistent, so that they remember each of those 5 to 7 times the same so that it's not confusing, and so that they know like, oh, I saw Hollie's brand 5 times, and each of those 5 times her brand was pink and orange. And so now in my brain, Hollie's brand is pink and orange. So now I've made that connection in my brain. And so now the 8th time or whatever time I see pink and orange on my Instagram feed or in the supermarket aisle or wherever, I'm going to immediately think, oh, is that Hollie's brand? And maybe chances are it is. So that's why it's important to be consistent in terms of your brand identity and in terms of like your whole brand strategy, because in terms of like your messaging, your copywriting, your everything, you want to be as consistent as possible, because repetition, keeping things consistent is the way that you get become memorable. People recognize you. They become like, you become more recognizable, more memorable. When people think of a specific industry, they think of you, and so you get more like share in their mind when they think of a certain topic or a certain industry. So that's why consistency is really important when it comes to branding. And then ways you can do that is you can have like brand guidelines. So those are like rules that tell you how to use your brand. So if you work with a brand designer, they will often give those to you. So it will be a document that will tell you like, here's how to use your logo, here's how to not use your logo, here's the colors you should use, here's how you should combine them, etc. Or you can create those yourself if you're not working with a designer. And they're really useful if you are then going to be working with different people. If you are working with like multiple people who are interacting with your brand, like a copywriter or a graphic designer or a sign writer, or someone's making t-shirts or whatever, you want to make sure that all of those people have the same rules, so that they are printing the same colors and using the same fonts, and your logo always looks the same and all of those things. So that's why having guidelines is really helpful. Tip number 2 is to have like all of those assets set up in a file or a folder somewhere that's really easily accessible and navigatable, easy to navigate.
No, I'm down for navigatable.
It's a word.
I think it's a word.
It is now.
Yeah, I'm adding it to the dictionary. But putting them in a folder where somebody can easily access them and find what they need. So say, again, you're working with a printer or somebody's making you t-shirts or whatever, you can say, here's this folder, here's all the colors you need, here's all the fonts, etc. That means they're not like going off to the internet and downloading some hack version of your font that's going to look really weird. They know they've got exactly the right version, exactly the right hex codes for your colors, exactly the right things. So having all your assets all set up or easy to access, all of that good things. And then my 3rd tip is to regularly like check in on your brand. So make sure that you're like auditing your brand every so often, every like quarter or every 6 months or at least once a year, to like just see where is your brand out in the world and how does it look? Is there anywhere where it is a mess and needs fixing or hasn't gone well, or do you need some better processes so that some things that happened don't happen again? Could you improve things? And also like, does your brand need an update or a refresh to make it better or to improve it or to make it feel more aligned with how your brand has changed over time, or things like that. So I would recommend, auditing your brand every so often just to make sure that things are still on brand, still consistent, still in line, and that you don't have any like processes or things that need to be fixed. So those are my top tips for consistency.
I love that.
It's very good. I think the brand auditing is something very important, and it leads into our next question, which businesses might start off really strong, like they might have their brand strategy done and their visual brand identity, but then over time they might find that, get a bit lax, or they might see that, something else is happening or follow trends or something like that. Are there some strategies you can recommend to combat this, or even ways of speaking to people who have kind of gone a bit lax with it?
Yeah, I think like the regular check-ins is definitely what I would recommend to do that. Like I would, like, if you're listening to this today, put a time in your calendar that recurs every like quarter or every 6 months to check in on your brand. That's what I have, a meeting every quarter that I review a lot of things in my business, but a part of that is my brand. And so I would have like a standing meeting with yourself or whoever's in your team, if you have a team, to make sure you're doing that, and like don't miss that meeting. Because your brand is one of those things that it's easy to let it like slip when there's other things going on. So if you put that in your calendar now, hopefully then it won't get slipped. But I think, having that time set aside is good. But then also I think sometimes it's okay if your brand has changed. Something that I think people get a little worried about is that your brand can never change. Like if you've made a decision that you're locked into that for life, especially like people who are like one-person businesses or independent businesses. I think it's a lot more that way if you are like a big corporate business like McDonald's, like we were talking about, for example. It's a lot more that way for them. Like, yes, they have more strict brand guidelines that need to be adhered to, and they need to stay that way for a long time. But if you're just like one person or a small team or a small group, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of your brand, and it actually can change, and I think it almost should change in some ways. So I think having that time set aside every 6 months or every quarter or whatever can be a good time to check in and say like, okay, our brand has changed or has like evolved over time, and that might be a bad thing, but maybe also is it because we've evolved? Like maybe it's a good thing that it's changed, and maybe the fact that it's like we've become really lax, or some things changed, or we've started adding in these other elements. Like, what is that telling us? Is that telling us that what we had before wasn't flexible enough, or is it telling us that the strategy we had before wasn't right, or it was not including like this element that we were missing, or maybe we are now trying to attract this new different type of person, so we need to change our identity a little bit actually. So it can be a really good time to think like, okay, maybe it's changed, but it's for a reason. So I think that can be sometimes a good thing too. And we change as people. So if you're a personal brand, if you're going to change as a person, then probably your brand should to reflect you, I think.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And just following on from that, what are some common branding pitfalls or mistakes that you've seen small to medium-sized business owners? If you've got any examples, you don't have to say their names.
Yeah.
How can they avoid them, or what's some common branding pitfalls you've noticed?
Yeah, I think the most common pitfall that I have noticed is following trends. And it's one that's like probably is talked about a lot, but it's one that I still see all the time. And I'm like, I couldn't not name people, but I could name trends, you know. There's like some on Instagram I see all the time that's like neutral colors with a serif font. That's like some of the fonts in like italics. And I'm like, okay, cool. I've seen that 20,000 times. And it looks nice. It looks great. Oh, and all the images are in black and white. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen it's nice and it's cool, but I've seen it so many times. And so it's easy to fall into that because it's like, okay, it obviously works. It's worked for some people. So you might want to do it because it does well on Instagram or it looks really good, but is it going to stand the test of time? Are you going to get to the point 6 months down the road and have to redo it because nobody's doing it anymore, or you figure out that it doesn't actually attract your ideal client, or you hate it? So I think, the pitfall that I would see is that it's just so tempting to do that, to follow these trends. But what you really need to do is try so hard to just not even look at what anybody else is doing. When I do the visual identity or visual direction part of the mood boarding and the Make People Brand Magic stuff, I recommend people don't even look at branding stuff in that process. Like when we're doing mood boarding, look at like art and sculpture and fashion and like other stuff that can be inspiration for your brand instead of actual brands. Because if you look at actual brands, you're just going to be inspired by trends and what other people are doing, and that's how you get tied into like just copying someone else or falling into a trend. And so I would recommend, as much as you can, just ignore what anybody else is doing. Ignore the last 6 months of launches of anybody else's new brands, and just like focus on what is your strategy. What do you need to convey? Who do you need to attract? And what is going to work for that? And that's what you need to focus your brand identity on, literally nothing else. Because that's what's going to work the best. So that's the biggest mistake that I see for sure.
I love that piece of advice. I feel like it ties in as well around what you were first saying around bringing in your personality into the brand. So it's like, who are you and how do you bring yourself into that brand as well? Yeah. And then, you're an individual. No one can be you. So
exactly.
All right. To flip it on its head, we'd love to hear about, so Maker and Moxie features success stories and profiles, which we love. We love championing other people and other business owners. So can you share with us an inspiring story of a small business owner who may have overcome some adversity and found success from the help of your platform?
Yes, I would love to do that. That's my favorite thing. Also, it's literally my favorite part of my job is interviewing people on my podcast. I will tell you about my friend Pepper. So Pepper is somebody that I worked with, I would say 3 years ago now, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Her and I did some coaching together. So I was her coach, and she's also been a guest on my podcast. And so we worked together those years, 2 or 3 years ago. And when we worked together then, Pepper was spending most of her time working on client work. And only a small portion of her time creating her own artwork. And she's an artist, she's an illustrator, but she was spending probably 70% of her time working on stuff for clients, and only 30% on her own stuff. And so as an artist, you can imagine that that's quite disheartening. You're like, I just want to make my own stuff, and then spend as little time as possible making stuff for other people. And so that was her goal was okay, I want to flip that around and spend 70-80% of my time working on my own stuff, and then 20% of the time working on stuff for other people. And also the 20 or 30% of time she was spending on her own work was making stuff that had worked in the past. And so she was making like these pins that were native birds that everybody liked, and so she was still just making them because they sold, but they weren't necessarily pins that she really loved. They were just pins that sold. So she was like, I still want to make my own stuff, but I want to make stuff that I love. And she also, another one of her goals was to have like sold out launches. So have these drops of products where she would do like these pre-orders that would sell out, or she would do drops that would all sell out. And so this recent, she just did a launch, and she doesn't do like launches that have a limited amount of products, so they don't sell out, but she decided to do pre-orders, and she sold over 100 t-shirts, which is way over what she could ever thought she could do before.
Wow.
And she has like fully flipped the client work and her own work, and the like latest drops that she's doing is fully work that she wants to do. Like it's not not the birds that she used to have to do because they sold. It's like work that she wants to do. And so what I did is I like went back and I screenshotted the list of all the goals that we had written down when we worked together 3 years ago, and I sent it to her, and I was like, look, I ticked them all off. And I sent it to her, and she was like, oh my god, thank you so much for like sending me this list, because I didn't realize how much I ticked off. And it was such a good like a reminder for like her and other creatives that like you just don't realize how much you have achieved, and it takes maybe someone outside your situation to be like, look at what you've done that you forgot and hadn't noticed. But I was like, look at what you have achieved is so amazing. And like, I worked with her, but I was just there to support her. She did all of that. And so I was just so proud of her for doing that. And it took a lot of hard work to do that. Yeah. It wasn't like just easy. She worked really hard over the last few years to make that happen. And so, yeah, I was really proud of her. So that's Pepper Raccoon if you want to check her out. But yeah, super proud of her.
That's amazing. Big shout out. That's yeah. I think there's something about like also just stopping, and as you said, you had the little list, you showed her this is where you were, this is where, because I think we forget to do that so often, to stop, take a moment and go, hang on, am I living the life that I wanted 3 years ago?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 years ago, me would be like so happy that I'm here right now. So good. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. Well, amazing shout out. And yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's such an inspiring example. And yeah, I love that. So yeah, we're gonna wrap up now a little bit, and we're just gonna talk to you a little bit more about Maker and Moxie. So what's in store for the immediate future of Maker and Moxie? And when's the next mastermind? And I've got 2 other questions to finish off with you.
Okay. Well, the next mastermind is all of the time. So the spoiler alert is that Map Your Brand Magic is now step 1 of a 4-step year-long mastermind, which is called the Next Level Creative, which takes you through the 4 steps of your complete branding process. So step 1 is your brand strategy, and then your brand identity, and then marketing your brand, and then scaling your brand. So that includes, Map Your Brand Magic, step 1, and then these other steps. And so, I'm excited that has already launched, and so you can join that anytime now. So I'm super excited to have that open. And so my whole focus now is just on enrolling people in that and supporting people in that, and doing some like really fun marketing things to get that like growing and scaling and all of that. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And also growing my podcast. So I've mentioned that a couple of times. So yeah, my podcast, Brand Your Passion. I'm just focusing on that. I'm almost at 100 episodes. So
oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you. Feels crazy. So yeah, I was just talking to my partner today about what I'm going to do for the 100th episode. So that will be in December. So I will be celebrating that then. So I'm just working up to that. So yeah.
Wow, that's cool. And how is it delivered? If you can join any time, do you get still coaching, or is it through video as well, or like webinar kind of thing? Just for the
Next Level Creative.
Yeah.
So the trainings are all like pre-recorded, so you can watch and listen to those anytime. And everything inside the Next Level Creative is asynchronous. So if you don't know what that means, it means it just happens without, none of it is live. Basically. So you still get coaching from me, but it's through like Loom videos or audio recordings or text replies and stuff like that. Basically, I have done it that way so that nobody misses out on anything. So if you're in a different time zone or anything like that, you never miss a live coaching call or anything like that, and then have to sit through like an hour-long video just to get your question answered or to catch up on anything. Basically, you can, like, if you have a question or you want to get feedback on something, you can submit your work or submit a question, and then I will reply to your feedback, or I will record an answer to your question, and it gets put into like a private podcast feed. So you can just, like, if you have a question, you can just search up your question and then find it in the private podcast feed. So you get custom feedback, custom coaching. It's just all done asynchronously. So yeah, you get the training, the feedback, the coaching, and the community all in the Next Level Creative for a whole year. So yeah.
Wow.
All designed to help you take your whole creative business to the next level. That's the whole plan.
Ooh. And if we have to forward maybe 5 or 8 years down the track, 8 years is long. My gosh.
Long time.
I'm just like 8 years. Where do you hope to see Maker and Moxie at then? Or, you know, it's a long time to think about, but for the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one I actually always ask in like my brand strategy workshops, and people always struggle. So it's good to have that turned on me. I'm always like, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
Spotlight.
Yeah. Yeah, great question. I actually don't see too much of the like programs and everything changing. I just would love to see the scale of it changing. Like, I think I would love to see the Next Level Creative still going, but just with like more coaches, more people. I really want to have like guest people coming in and running trainings and doing things like that. And I have some like fun things planned for the podcast. I really want to host like a summit on my podcast. I think it would be awesome. That's like a secret for only you. Yeah, and same thing like with the podcast. I just like want to keep the podcast going, but with like more listeners and bigger guests that people can learn from and stuff like that. So I'm like so happy with what I'm doing. I'm just like, I just want to help more people. So that's where I think I would love to be in 5 to 8 years, doing the same thing, just helping more people. I
love it. I love the passion.
Yeah, that's cool. And that's why, you know, the podcast is called what it is. You know, you can feel the passion when you're talking to us. So yeah. And lastly,
a little branding nerd.
Yeah, well, it's good.
Nothing wrong with a nerd.
No.
Yeah. So you've kind of touched on it, that do you have any dream clients or dream projects? Or not, maybe? in the future?
Not in like particular, but I just like any creatives are my dream, you know. Anybody listening who's an artist, a maker, anybody making something who just wants to share that what they're making with the world, you're my dream.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's having as well. It says you're building it. You've built and will continue building a community of makers, and I think that is just damn magical. Like,
Thanks.
100%.
And it's just because like that's who I am. You know, like as I told you, I started my business as an artist. I still am an artist. I just don't sell my work or, you know, do that right now anyway. But that's just who I always will be and who I always will love to hang out with and support. And it's all just always will be integral to who I am and what's important to me and stuff. So yeah, that always will be my community of people.
That's cool. And finally, where can our listeners find you?
Yes,
there needs to be a drum roll.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. You can find me everywhere, but mostly on Instagram and Threads right now at Maker and Moxie, and on my website makerandmoxie.com.
Yay.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Hollie. It's been so lovely to have you as a guest.
No, it's been my pleasure. I've had a great time.
Brilliant.
Yeah. It's been like what you have on your Instagram and your website, like it definitely translates in who you are. You're the same everywhere, and I love that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, we were really excited to have you on the show, so thank you so much.
Thanks. That's so nice.
See?
Yeah, I'm excited to.